Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Next Big Future, and I have a great guest today. I have Warren Redlich. I've spoken a few times on his YouTube channel, and he's graciously come to speak on mine. So we can just start talking about Tesla and SpaceX and whatever else Warren wants to talk about.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Okay, thanks for joining us. So a lot of things going on with Tesla. So what do you think about some of the things like we have Q2 coming up, the deliveries and stuff like that, which are likely to be somewhat suppressed because of the COVID shutdown. So any general feeling about the market, or are you just looking all past that?
Well, I don't look at the short-term market stuff. What I think is coming for Q2 is I don't know what the final delivery numbers will be for the quarter. It might be off. Mm-hmm. I think the important question is going to be, are we going to hear a run rate for the company at the end of the quarter? And are we going to hear projections for where they think it's going? Because in the past, they've projected that they expect Berlin and Texas to hit 5,000 or 10,000 a week by the end of the year.
Right.
Now, my impression is that Texas is slow. It's not that Berlin has started to ramp, and they hit 1,000 a week recently. And, at some point they'll get to 5,000 a week, and maybe by the end of the year, they'll get 10,000 a week. And that's a big deal. Right. Because 10,000 a week is 500,000 vehicles a year. Right. And I think they'll ultimately do more than that. Texas seems to be behind Berlin by quite a bit. There was some issue with some tooling for the 2170 line being held up in Shanghai. There's some issue with 4680s not being ramped as quickly as they hoped. Right. So are they going to get over that hump and get to, to me, I don't worry so much about whether they get to 5,000 a week or 10,000 a week by the end of the year. It's, are they on a path to getting to these high volumes in the near future? And I think we're seeing a lot of promising things. I mean, I think the number out of Shanghai that it looks like they're going to hit 70,000 vehicles for June. Right. I've seen that number too. And maybe 75,000. Now, 75,000 would be a pace of 900,000 vehicles a year from one factory. Right. And that's not finished with the ramp. Right. So ultimately, I think we can expect 2023. It seems likely that the current Giga Shanghai will produce. I think they said they're shutting it down in early July, and they're going to increase the volume to 22,000 a week. That's right. 22,000 a week is 1.1 million a year. Right. So Giga Shanghai and the one factory in 2023 will produce more vehicles than Tesla produced in 2021. Right. And there's Berlin, Texas, and Fremont, and they're building another factory in Shanghai that's the same size as the current factory in Shanghai. Right. So if you look down the road, you don't have to go very far to say, okay, they're going to be making 2 million vehicles a year out of Shanghai when they get the second factory up and runing. Yep. They're probably going to hit 1 million a year out of Berlin. They're probably going to do 2 million a year out of Texas, and they're probably going to do more than 1 million a year out of Fremont. So you're looking at a company that's going to be making at least 6 million vehicles a year on the factories that we know about. Right. And we know they're planning. So 2024 could be a 6 million vehicle a year. So that's, I don't look short term at what's the stock price this week. Yeah. I don't look short term at, what did they produce or deliver this quarter? I want to see growth. Don't get me wrong. I like to see good numbers. Right. But I look at, well, what are the prospects for down the road? And I keep seeing good news. For the long term. There's short term, not so great news, which is, look, there's supply chain issues that everybody's facing. As far as I can tell, Tesla is still doing better than everybody else, and they're growing at an insane rate. And they've got all this, the path to the future is very, very strong. Right. And something that I'm very positive about is that it looks like the point when we get really good traction, transitioning from a little bit of trouble now to that, really good 2024 that you're talking about, is that in Q3, the Qs will be pretty clean, because I'm expecting to be pretty clean because the 2-week shutdown, and we get to scale to that 90,000 per month level. Then you're getting like 220,000 from Shanghai, and then there will be ramp from Berlin, and at some point I'm expecting Q3,
will start getting problem solved in Texas, and then that could easily be a 400K plus delivery quarter, and then with a really good then Q4 with 270,000. Yeah.
Look,
yeah.
Shanghai alone
Mm-hmm.
should deliver over 200,000 in Q3.
Right.
And then you got Fremont, which should probably deliver 150,000.
Right.
Berlin will 25 to 50,000. You're already at 400,000 before you had Texas.
That's right. And then that starts really improving the earnings per share number. Like once we break out of that, the revenue starts really going really good. So then quarter by quarter, it starts really starts surprising people, because we have 4 or 5 ways that we could surprise in volume with that. And then I think also the battery issues look really good. Like the CATL batteries, they're talking about getting a structural battery pack, and they're a supplier to Tesla. BYD will supply their batteries to Tesla at some point in some levels. So that plus
wait, sorry, I haven't seen yet. I've heard rumors that BYD might supply batteries to Tesla, but I haven't seen anything solid on that. Have you seen something I haven't seen?
The most definitive thing I saw was that BYD vice president in an interview saying that they would be supplying batteries to Tesla. So if they're saying it,
well, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So that's the most solid thing. With the interview in Chinese by a Chinese channel.
Because there was a rumor that BYD had a contract to supply 200,000 batteries for 200,000 vehicles. Their Blade battery system.
Right.
That wouldn't bother me at all. That would be good news.
Right. The reason I think that at some point, it's going to happen in some volume is because I think BYD is also making a kind of Corolla equivalent car for Toyota. So it seems like BYD is willing to ramp up its batteries more than their own production. So they're willing to sell to whoever kind of comes along. So in that case, I think there'll be more. And also, I think they have to ramp up their production a lot more based on how much the other big battery makers in China are doing. Like CATL, like BYD used to be ahead of Tesla and CATL in battery. Like you roll back the clock before Model 3, they were ahead of in terms of both productions, and then they fell behind. And now there's like S-Volt putting in like $100 billion, and it's going to ramp up to 600 gigawatts. CATL ramping up to 1,200. So there's many players in the China battery space, CALB, China, airport batteries, that are looking to make these huge investments, which either based on the volumes that they're doing and how much they expect to have in 2025, either we're making 50 million EVs, or we have some lower level and a massive glut of these iron LFP batteries, which China has done before. They did that with solar cells and stuff.
My understanding is that LFP batteries are now selling at a large profit. That the price point for LFP right now is so high that it's barely competitive with nickel.
Yeah.
Because there's basically just so much demand for battery cells that you just can't make enough batteries. The more batteries you make, the more money you make, and there's no disincentive to making more batteries. So if you can ramp production of batteries faster than you can ramp production of vehicles, there's lots of people who want to buy your batteries.
Right.
So that's pretty straightforward. I think the demand for LFP cells will be huge even without vehicles because of Powerwall, Megapack. I think there's a huge market for LFP cells. Just huge. I mean, I want to buy some for myself.
Right. So I think Tesla is I've seen some articles on it making an LFP Megapack. So they're redesigning that and putting that into the Latham facility.
Lathrop, yes.
Lathrop, yeah. So I think that should help wrap that up a lot, because you can be bigger and less dense, and it doesn't matter for stationary storage.
Yeah, I also thought it was really interesting when Drew Baglino was speaking with a couple of guys at Stanford in front of an audience there, and he talked about sodium. That if somebody can come along and make a sodium based battery work, then that would work fine. And it might be larger in terms of would have less energy density than lithium iron phosphate, but that's not important for megapack. Megapack can be arbitrarily large. It's not moving, right? The cars move. They need to have a reasonable volume and a reasonable mass.
Right.
But megapack can be, if you can supply us with a sodium-based battery chemistry that works, that will meet, the requirements that we have, then we just added another item to our menu.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, right. And I personally actually I have Tesla solar on my roof, and I have power walls. So I just applied for the virtual power plant for PG&E and California doing it. They haven't accepted me yet, but
Right.
So when that happens, so they make have people who have power walls, and they say you have 200 of them, so that combined is a megawatt hour or more, or whatever, of virtual power. And
it's
so
2
then,
megawatt hours.
Yeah, 2 megawatt hours. Yeah, so then you're
2.5 maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. So then they've already done some tests on this, and basically they say they'll give you like $2 per kilowatt hour. So
that's huge.
Yeah,
that's a lot of money.
Yeah. So basically,
I pay as much as 50. I've seen people pay as much as 50 cents a kilowatt hour for supercharging. I pay like 10, 12 cents a kilowatt hour at home for electricity. So if you're able to generate electricity on your roof, and you're able to generate 50 kilowatt hours, let's say you had a 12 kilowatt roof.
Yeah.
And you generated, say, 50 kilowatt hours a day. If you were able to sell 20 of that to the grid,
yeah,
be $40. If you do that, 5 times a month, that's $200 a month.
Right. But I think it's only right now they're only doing it for outages, which actually I had an outage today.
Well, California has a lot of outages.
Right. But fortunately I had Powerwall, so I will not have power. It saved me I only put it up like a few months ago, and I've already had 2 outages that I got saved from. So yeah, so this virtual power plant, I think they're talking about making $50-$60 per event, that if you have some outage that they expect, that they'll pay you $50-$60. So, and then who knows how that could scale up if they don't build things and they have growing power needs because of the more people getting EVs, then that would then cause even more need for greater power from the regular folks. Yeah. So that's interesting way for Tesla to grow. Anything else that you're seeing that's exciting in terms of the news for Q3, Q4, next year, longer?
No, I mean, I think the case for vehicle production and vehicle deliveries is, I think we've already covered that. I think the big question is, how quickly does FSD beta improve? What are we going to see? I mean, really what I'm looking forward to is, I think it's the end of September, we're going to have a second AI day, which was kind of a bonus. And what are we going to see at the second AI day? Well, we're going to see probably a Tesla bot prototype. And then we're probably going to learn a lot more about where FSD is. And we're probably going to learn about Dojo. Is Dojo up and running? And what impact will Dojo have on FSD beta's improvement? Will we learn about hardware 4, the next generation of hardware for the cars? There's a lot of different things that could be at AI Day 2. I'd be excited to see all of that. So
you've been doing a lot of driving with your Tesla, 1,000 miles,
7,000 miles on my new Model X. Yes.
And what is that FSD or what is it?
It's FSD, navigate on autopilot. I don't have FSD beta yet. And I will say that having driven 20,000 miles or so on FSD beta, I like it a lot better than navigate on autopilot. I want FSD beta. It's not that it drives fine, but it has limitations. There are say you're on a road that's 1 lane each way with a yellow line between the lanes. It will only go 5 miles an hour over the limit. FSD beta will go up to 85 miles an hour. Right. I mean, not that you would set it to 85 miles an hour, but FSD beta doesn't have an arbitrary limit on speed other than the 85 miles an hour on those roads. FSD beta will see a green light and just keep going. Navigate on autopilot prompts you to hit the accelerator pedal if you want to continue through the intersection. It's sort of like, checking to make sure you're paying attention, checking to make sure it's okay to go to the intersection. Oddly, it will prompt you well before a green light and it starts slowing down. But if there's a red light, it'll drive right up to the red light and slow down really hard. So it's kind of like an interesting, like you would think you'd want to slow down earlier for the red light. So there's a lot of quirks about and lane changing. Lane changing is frustrating in FSD beta. I think it's worse than Navigate on autopilot. And you're coming off an interstate highway. FSD beta will just keep driving. Navigate on autopilot bails on you when you get out once you're somewhere on the ramp. It says, "All right, you got to take over now." It doesn't exactly say it that way. And you're on city streets or whatever, and it needs to make a left turn. It won't make turns for you. FSD beta will basically do everything for you. So it's a real system shock to drive so many miles without FSD beta. It's nice to have the comfort of a Model X. The Model X is an extremely comfortable car. The Plaid is insanely powerful. But so I think what I look to is where, we just saw this Elon interview with Tesla Club Silicon Valley, I think it was.
Right.
And I think, he keeps making references to the progress they're making with FSD beta. And he said something that I think was different from anything he'd said before, that they're looking at point-to-point drives within cities without interventions. And that's like, I didn't know they were measuring that particular thing. Right. I just drove across the country, but that wasn't city driving mostly. Right. So, and I wasn't driving FSD beta, to be fair. James Dama just described driving. If you watch the
I just saw the Dave Lee thing. Yeah, Dama said he drove for 67 miles, but it was mountain roads.
Curvy mountain roads with 15-mile-an-hour hairpin turns with zero interventions, zero, no touching the accelerator pedal, no adjusting the speed, just no brake, just zero.
And he felt totally confident with it. It felt like a great driver, was what he's saying.
It felt as good as a good human driver.
Right.
Now, he said there's other parts of the drive where he had to intervene, or 3 or 4 interventions the rest of the drive, which I think a lot of driving. I find, like, me personally, my interventions are usually like convenience interventions. Like, I want to pass that car and it's not passing. Right. I want to make this lane change, and it's soft on making lane changes. It's not doing anything dangerous. Right. Now, I can't wait to. I really like looking forward to getting FSD beta back. I'm borderline frustrated I don't have FSD beta.
So would you get it back? Like, you had it on your other car, the Model 3, right?
I still own the other car. My daughter drives it. She doesn't use FSD beta, but she has the other car. I think at probably when they go to 10.13. I'm just guessing that I have a 97 safety score. I haven't driven it a month yet, because I got it on June 8th, I think. So it's still, I don't know if they make you wait a month or what they're looking for. But hopefully when 10.13 comes out, I'll get a notice. I'll have to drive somewhere to get somebody's house to get on Wi-Fi or something. I have a couple candidates for where I'm going to go. I'm moving around.
Right.
I'm this place that you see me in, I'm moving out of in a few days. And maybe it's 2 days, no, 3 days. I'm moving out in 3 days, and I've got a little cabin I'm going to stay in where I'm not going to have meaningful internet. I ordered Starlink for it, but I don't have Starlink yet.
Right.
And then I'm going to ultimately be moving to the Canaveral area, and I may or may not have Wi-Fi available for my car when I'm in Canaveral. So there's going to be a bunch of issues there, but we'll see.
When you go to Canaveral, you become also a SpaceX YouTuber, where you're going to.
I started as a SpaceX YouTuber. I still am a SpaceX YouTuber. I love SpaceX more than I love Tesla, and I love Tesla. I'm not happy in South Florida. That's a whole nother story. But I want to be near Canaveral. I want to be there. SpaceX has submitted plans to build a manufacturing site at Canaveral that's bigger than the current manufacturing facilities at Starbase.
Right.
I expect we're going to see a huge volume of launches from there. And the place I think I'm going to be at in Canaveral, I think I'm going to have a balcony that will have views of the launches. Cool.
That'd be very great.
I think we're going to be the second floor balcony. So I'm kind of excited about the prospect. This isn't locked down. This isn't solid yet, but it's like a space I'm going to have that's going to be a YouTube studio. And I'll be able to invite people to come, hang out at this. We'll create it like a hangout space in addition to some rooms for making videos. And if YouTubers want to use my green screen room, they can use my green screen room or whatever. I have ideas in my head. It's not all in place, but
okay.
So I'm very excited about SpaceX. I think we're going to see orbital launches. Starship you always go on Elon time, but I think there's a really good chance we're going to see a orbital test launch of Starship in August.
Right.
And they are building structures at Canaveral already. And what Elon said was that the structures they're building at Canaveral will be more advanced than the one they already have at Starbase. So
they always make build better and better every time.
Build back better, yeah.
Yeah. So you saw the Gwynne Shotwell interviews, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where she talked about, and she was talking about the 4,000. Well, I calculated it'd be 4,000 Raptor engines or whatever the new engines are, because she was saying she wanted to make one Starship per day, right? So that's 9 engines. So right from there you're at 30, 3,500 some engines, 30,000 some engines, and then you make the booster engines, and you need, even though you have more Starships per booster, you still need to have quite a few boosters. I calculate at least, of course, one booster per launch facility. So they make the launch facility, the stage 0, really cheap.
Oh, there's probably gonna be 2 or 3 boosters per facility.
Yeah,
if not more.
Yeah, but still, it's a not nearly as many of the Starships per facility.
Well, yeah, I mean, the boosters fly up and come back, and they're back in 10, 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you just got to refuel them, and that takes an hour. Refill them.
Refill them, yeah.
And that takes like an hour. So you can probably do more than 10 launches a day with each booster.
Yep. And so that Mechazilla, because they've only done a Falcon 9 launch, the closest they've done is like one every 27 days, where it's the same booster, same rocket. It takes 27 days to like turn it around, to get it back from the ocean, et cetera, and all that kind of stuff. So then going to multiple per day, you increase it by 100 times, by 1,000 times.
Yeah, this is an interesting question of whether Canaveral, because I don't think Starbase would allow it, whether Canaveral will allow them to do that many launches. How many launches is Canaveral going to allow them to do? I mean, the thing is, the nice thing about Canaveral versus Starbase is the community was built up for space. The people who live there are excited about space.
Right.
So they're not going to mind if there's a lot of launches. And I think the location of the launch pad is far enough from populated areas that it's not going to bother people to have a lot of launches. Where Starbase, it's about 4 miles from South Padre Island, which is, there's a population there.
Right.
And then Starbase doesn't really have the infrastructure to support all the things that SpaceX would do in heavy launch volume. So, but ultimately, do they need offshore platforms or offshore islands or something to launch from?
Right.
I found this great island off the Bahamas, about 20 miles north of the nearest, population. That it's only like 100 miles from West Palm Beach. Do it, bore a tunnel out there. I don't know if you could bore a tunnel that far underwater, but maybe.
How many miles are you talking about?
It's about 100 miles. I don't think you could bore a tunnel that far under the ocean.
I think you're just extending it a little bit beyond, I think, the longest tunnel. I think there is some tunnel somewhere, I can't remember exactly where, that's longer than the channel. I think China made some really long tunnel that's pretty close to, I think it's like 60, 70 miles. So 100 miles,
I'm not saying it's technically not feasible. I'm just saying that's a challenge.
You'd be breaking new ground. Yeah.
Well, no, but it's sort of like, what's your emergency exit plan for your tunnel? If you're 50 miles from shore,
right.
When something breaks down, that might not be convenient.
So. Yeah. But the talk they have with Indonesia with their nickel is also interesting, because Indonesia sounds like they want to do a bunch of other stuff. And I think these launches and stuff would make sense too, because they got all these islands and stuff, and they're, I think, right along the equator, so they'd be really good for launches there.
I definitely think there needs to be a launch facility in Asia. I think it should be somewhere closer to Shanghai, Beijing, and Tokyo, but maybe there'll be 2. And as long as you can do a tunnel from the location to the mainland and get to Shanghai, because Shanghai is big and Beijing is big, and I would say Tokyo is pretty big, and there's probably, what's the Kuala Lumpur is Malaysia? Indonesia is, I forget their capital.
In Jakarta.
Jakarta, maybe. Yeah. I mean, those are all big cities.
Mhm.
I think China in particular is the big destination for Starship.
Mhm.
That's where the biggest population is. That's where the more wealth is located.
Mhm.
So I would love to see a Starbase. That there's a challenge there with your exporting. Are you exporting technology the military doesn't want you to export?
Mhm.
Right. That's an interesting challenge there. How do you get past that hurdle?
Mhm.
But I would love to see some kind of launch platform in Asia, or landing and launch platform in Asia, that would enable Starship to make trips from Los Angeles to Shanghai fast.
Mhm.
And I would guess that some island there are islands off Shanghai. I would guess some
Right.
island off Shanghai is like a high priority.
Plus, Asia is always reclaiming land, where they dig up the ocean bottom and then pile up a little lump into a new island. So
I think the airport near Osaka, the Kansai airport, I believe that one is built on reclaimed land.
Right. And the Hong Kong did it, and so it's a very common thing. And so the South China Sea, which those controversial military islands, China did that. So they have this fleet of dredgers, so they can make islands in a hurry. So
Elon would be happy to talk to the Chinese about doing it. I just think there's this hurdle of will the U.S. government allow them to? Can they do it without violating some sort of exporting the technology issue? But I think I think the big news for SpaceX right now is Starlink growing and expanding. I mean, I wish they would grow a little bit faster so I could get my Starlink antenna for my cabin. I will probably, when I move to Canaveral, I will be using Starlink at the space I have in Canaveral lined up. So,
well, I think that their main limitation is just the mass production of the dishes and receivers right now. So of course they're getting up the satellites themselves, but I actually did a little calculation based on, so they're up to about 500,000 users now, and they're making about 30,000 dishes per
well, they have a second problem. The second problem is they've been making Starlink satellites for Falcon 9 launches. And they have a new satellite design for the Starship launches, which is a much more capable satellite. So once they start launching successfully on Starship in volume, they're probably going to stop manufacturing the smaller satellite. Right. So how do you manage that transition? Or are you going to continue launching the smaller satellites on Falcon 9 while you're launching the larger satellites on?
I believe they'll be doing that.
Once Starship scales, it's like you're not going to want to waste the orbital slot on a smaller, less capable satellite.
I think they've already, based on their FAA filings, they have to be in these different launch angles or whatever like that. So they are already separated out. So they don't.
No. What I'm saying is, you've got 2,000 satellites now. Let's say, I think that's a rough number. But you have your approval for 10,000 satellites. Once you have the second generation satellite, which is more capable, you want to use your 8,000 slots for more capable satellites rather than less capable satellites. I suppose you can deorbit the smaller ones sooner. But there's an investment there. I don't know. That's going to be an interesting challenge for SpaceX. But I mean, the big story is 500,000 users, $1,000 a year.
Right.
That's a lot of money.
Right.
Now you're going to go up to 1 million users, 5 million users, 10 million users, and you start to talk about really serious money.
Right.
And then there are special use cases like traders in London who want to have faster, lower latency times in their transmissions to the New York financial markets. You're going to have cruise ships. You're going to have airplanes. Some of these use cases might pay more. But I really think it's just the bulk. You got 10 million users paying it. I think that model of that really simple thing, you get to 10 million users paying $1,000 a month. Well, that's $1,000 a year. That's $10 billion a year. And my gut hunch is the upside of that market is more than 100 million users, and maybe 300 million users.
Yeah, I agree. And basically, once you're over that 10 billion, then the fixed costs are all covered, all your launch costs are covered, and you're just printing money. By my calculation on the lifetime, that 5-year plus lifetime, and I believe they extend lifetime by just replacing, the 2,000 that fall off, just say relaunch and they keep going. It's about 10 to 1 for for the first generation small satellites, and then 100 to 1 in terms of like how much my lifetime revenue is compared to how much it cost me to put it up and operate it.
I think it's better than that. No, it's better than. So if you figure, let's suppose they get to 40,000 satellites.
Yeah.
Or we'll call it 50,000. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to replace 10,000 satellites a year because they're only good for 5 years.
Right.
Well, your launch costs on Starship go down so much that, you know, you're launching, let's say 100, I'm going to make up a number, 100 satellites. I don't know if Starship's big enough for that, but if you're launching 100 satellites per launch at $2 million a launch, you know,
it'd be 100, it'd be $200 million to launch it all. Yeah. So then,
no. What I'm saying is, sorry. Right. Okay. I think you got it right.
Yeah.
So it's $200 million a year just to launch your satellites. You know, I'd add other costs up and you get to $1 billion a year in costs, but you're making $100 billion a year in revenue.
Right.
In 1 year.
Right.
It's not 100 to 1. It's like 500 to 1.
500,000 to 1.
The return on investment for one of those satellites.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Now, now I don't know how much it costs to make the second generation satellite, but when you make it at scale, it's probably less than 100 grand.
I think they're right now they're at 250.
They were 250 a while ago.
Yeah. So that 250K. So yeah, maybe they're getting, and obviously they're always trying to get that cost down. So and if they get it down to that, then I also calculate that they could put up such large numbers that you could replace every cell tower equivalent, because there are 5 million cell towers in the world. So if you get to cost that low, you could then,
well, I don't think you can replace cell towers because the cell phone can't receive the signal from the Starlink satellite. What you might be able to do is put a Starlink antenna, like a larger Starlink antenna somewhere that doesn't have good cell service, and put up, you could create your own cell phone network.
Right.
They could buy like a third tier cell phone provider in every country.
Yep.
And then expand the number of towers by putting Starlinks down where needed to improve the signal and end up becoming the largest provider of cell phone service in a country.
Right. Yeah.
That's an example of, now, is that the best use of your bandwidth? Probably not, but maybe.
Yeah. They just have a lot of options because they have so much bandwidth and capability. Just
but I think you're looking at over $100 billion a year in revenue long term, as in 3-4 years from now, maybe 5 years from now, they hit $100 billion a year in revenue.
Yeah.
On costs that are probably less than $10 billion a year.
Yep.
So it's like 90% margins, gross margins. And then, when they
Cargo
IPO,
delivery.
right. So they probably IPO in 2 or 3 years to raise the money to fund everything they want to build.
Yep.
And they're probably going to IPO at a valuation of like, just our Starlink alone will be valued maybe at $100 billion.
No, they're already at,
SpaceX is valued over 100 billion.
Right.
I'm saying Starlink alone will IPO at over 100 billion.
Right. And then goes to 300 billion on the first day of trading or something like that.
Well, I mean, if you got $100 billion a year in revenue and 90 billion of it is profit, and you're growing,
$1 trillion of value. Yeah. It's
like, a more than $1 trillion valuation.
Yeah. 2 trillion, something like that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that's exciting near-term.
And then think about this. Elon owns like half the company.
Right. He owns half the company. Yeah.
So Elon ends up having more wealth from Starlink than he has from Tesla.
Well, we're hoping Tesla goes up a lot more, but
but if let's say Starlink was worth 1 trillion and Elon owns 40% of it at that point.
Yeah.
Right. So he's got 400 billion from Starlink.
Yeah.
Tesla would have to go to 2 trillion plus for Elon's stake in Tesla to match that. So I think he will. Yeah.
But both, because the fact that he gets 50% or whatever from that versus 20% from Tesla, then if Tesla has to be 2.5-3 times more in order to balance it out. But the SpaceX Starlink part keeps pushing it. Yes. Yeah. And then whatever happened with Boring and Neuralink.
Boring Company's a whole nother thing. I mean, they talked about in their funding round press release that they're expecting to start digging 600 miles of tunnel a year in the United States, when over the last 20 years, the United States built 20 miles of tunnel. I mean, they're going to 30x the tunneling in the United States, and that's just at the beginning. And you've probably heard me talk about this, but number one, just within cities, this is a huge situation. My expectation is that Boring Company will self-fund building the tunnels. The cities will love it because they're getting infrastructure for free,
right?
And then they'll pay the cities, 10% of revenue, and it's like a monster cash cow,
right?
For 50 plus years. You look at that revenue stream that you're generating, and then you go intercity routes, and then you go, my favorite, you've probably heard me talk about Bering.
Right, Bering
tunnels up the west coast and under into Alaska, under the Bering Strait, down through Russia into China.
Yeah, once the Russia problem gets solved, yes.
Well, the Chinese the Chinese will just pay Putin off.
Okay.
I mean, this is the thing. We have all these, these stories and all this stuff. Look, if the Chinese want it,
yeah,
they can buy Putin,
right?
And he probably wanted anyway.
Yeah,
that's not a big deal.
And it's years away because they still have to like a year from now to get the Vegas thing.
Bering is 10 years away.
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah. So a long time. Putin could be dead by then. Who knows? Yeah. Many things can change, and going to Mars. The world.
No, and people don't understand when I say boring the Bering Strait. That the issue is if you do 2 cargo tunnels, all you do is cargo tunnels, or you just do 1 cargo tunnel, and you just you use a new modified shipping container that you just discard at the end or recycle at the end, and you don't bother shipping the containers back. So you just have 1 tunnel. It would only be like $25 billion for 1 tunnel, and it would be able to ship all the cargo that's currently coming across on ships and getting delayed in ports and all this other stuff. You could ship all that cargo in 1 tunnel. It's mind blowing, and it would cost less. It wouldn't be vulnerable to weather. The potential that it would be more environmentally sound. You wouldn't be pumping diesel fumes into the air and dumping diesel fuel into the water. It's such a huge advantage. It would clean the oceans.
The interesting thing about Elon and all his plans and companies and stuff like that is that without Elon, you have the static future where things don't change, where you have SLS taking 20, 50 years, or something like that.
Yeah.
But with him, we get thousands of rockets that could deliver cargo in an hour. They're talking about doing that for the military. They pay them $1 billion to do that, and you land on the moon. And then so the infrastructure, the actual how fast things move, self-driving cars go 150 miles an hour. Every road becomes high-speed rail. And then Boring Company is making the tunnels everywhere, solving that problem. So it's the difference between things don't change and suck to things are great and fast and
things were improving much slower before Elon took over. And I just want to be clear, the Bering Strait idea is something I've talked about. I've never heard anybody from Boring Company talk about it.
Yeah.
But I know that the Chinese and Russians in the past for over 100 years have talked about finding a way across the Bering Strait.
Right.
Including tunnels, including bridges. The bridge idea is just absolutely bonkers nuts because of weather.
Yeah.
But I think we're seeing Elon's commitment to radical improvement in technology and making life better for people. And what I hope is, what I'm trying to do in my own life, I'm starting up a small electric vehicle company, and I have an idea for housing. I got 20 years left in my mind. I'm 56. I figure I got 20 good years left. I want to see what kind of dent I can make. And I'm not going to make anywhere near an Elon-sized dent, but if I can make like 1/100th of an Elon-sized dent, even 1,000th of an Elon-sized dent, that'd be good. And I hope other people are inspired. That's the thing. Like if you're watching this, if you have some free cash and some free time, figure out what startup you can do, or find a startup you want to support that you believe in. There's a company, some SpaceX engineers have this idea for how to do rail differently. Parallel systems, I think it's called. They have a totally new idea of how to do rail cargo. That's absolutely brilliant. I don't know if they're taking investments or not, but I mean, that seems like I looked at it. If you look up parallel systems, absolutely. I want to see like the seeds. So it's not just Elon. It needs to be that Elon's companies create seeds.
Yeah.
It's not just that somebody works at Tesla for 10 years, retires with $10 million and decides I don't need to work anymore. You need to see some of those guys say, hey, you know what? I got 10 million, but if I take 5 million of this and I invest in this business and I get some other investors, maybe I can create a $100 million or $1 billion company. Yeah. And if you could have hundreds of people like that coming out of Elon's companies or fans like us.
Yep. Right.
Then that's the real accelerator. Elon's great, but if the thing that Elon does most is he inspires others to do what he's doing,
and
you get thousands of people doing what Elon's done on a small, nobody has to be as good as Elon. But if you have thousands of people who are 1/100th of an Elon, you get 10 plus Elons.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the vision. That's the thing I'm most hopeful about.
Yeah, that would be a super exciting future to have that inspiration, as well as adapting all the stuff he's doing with digital self-management, the stuff he's doing in the factories, the innovations there.
Do you remember when Michael Jordan was playing basketball, Gatorade or Nike had a commercial, "Be like Mike"?
Yeah.
Like, I want to see "Be like Elon." I want to push. Look, it's great to dunk a basketball. I love Michael Jordan. Just to be clear, I'm a basketball fan. But Michael Jordan entertained us. Elon is making our lives better in a material way. And I want to see more like Elon. So let's encourage people to be more like Elon.
That sounds like a very inspirational and great way to finish our talk. I appreciate you coming on, Warren. And
thank you. If I can say really quick, check out the t-shirts, Tesla and Air t-shirt at elonbits.com. Also, the Let's Make Babies t-shirt. We could talk about that some other time. We all need to make more babies.
Sounds great.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.